Sandra was the heiress of the wealthiest family, sent out by her family to gain life experience. On the day she met Wayne, she was squatting by the roadside in an urban village eating instant noodles. A black Maybach pulled up in front of her, and as the window slowly rolled down, it revealed the face that countless socialites in the Beijing elite circle were vying for. "Be with me," Wayne smiled lazily. "Be my girlfriend, and I'll take care of you." She stared at him in a daze. The instant noodle soup spilling all over her hand. This following lasted for 5 years. He took her to live in a top-tier mansion, let her use his supplementary credit card freely, and at 3 in the morning, just because she said suddenly craving, he drove all over the city to buy her pan-fried buns. Everyone said, the high and mighty young master of the Stewart family had gone mad, actually doting on a girl of unknown origin. Only one thing he never mentioned, marriage. Sandra knew the reason. The background story she had fabricated for herself was too tragic: a drunken father, a sick mother, a broken-down home. Such a background could never meet the standards of the top-tier wealthy Stewart family. So when her 5-year trial period ended, the first thing she did was to confess her true identity to him, hoping to give him a pleasant surprise. But as she approached the door of his usual private room, she overheard the boisterous congratulations from his brothers inside. "Congratulations, Wayne, a son and a daughter. How perfect, a son for your second child. Your parents must be so relieved now. Come on, you must finish this drink." Sandra stood frozen at the doorway as if struck by lightning. Through the slightly ajar door, she saw Wayne surrounded by everyone, wearing his usual lazy smile. A brother put his arm around his shoulder and said in a low voice with a laugh, "Speaking of which, it's still Wayne who's impressive. The flag at home stands firm, while colorful flags flutter outside. Sandra, that little beauty is completely infatuated with you, and she really thinks she's the only one for you." Another chimed in, "Isn't that right? But Wayne, you've kept it so tight-lipped. You and Naomi have even had a second child together. If it weren't for the news from the Yi family today, we'd still be completely in the dark." Wayne swirled his glass, his tone unreadable. "The family is putting a lot of pressure on me. There has to be an heir, Naomi. After all, our families have been close for generations. We know each other inside and out. Then what about your feelings for Sandra?" He was silent for a moment before speaking calmly. "I love her, that won't change, but as you know, my marriage isn't up to me. I have to marry someone of equal status, and the same goes for having children. Sandra is wonderful, but her background is too humble. She can only be kept outside. As for marriage and children, I have other candidates." Every word felt like an ice-cold blade, ruthlessly stabbing into Sandra's heart. Her fingers tightened against the wall, nails digging into her palms, yet she felt no pain. It turned out the ache in her heart could be so sharp that it overwhelmed all other senses. "I love her, but her background is too poor. I can only keep her as a mistress, to marry and have children with. I have someone else in mind." These words buzzed in her ears, making her tremble all over with pain. For a moment, Sandra suddenly remembered the calligraphy hanging in Raymond's old family home. "Everything in this world has its price." Her father always said this was a fundamental truth in business, something she had once scoffed at, but now she understood that in Wayne's heart, even she, Sandra, had a price. A woman only fit to be kept outside, a mistress unworthy of the public eye. How ridiculous. She, the daughter of the wealthiest man, had actually been labeled as coming from a poor background. Sandra couldn't bear to listen any longer and stumbled away from that suffocating place. She staggered to the fire escape, slid down the cold wall, and finally couldn't hold back her sobs any longer. Tears fell like broken strings of pearls, uncontrollably streaming down her face. She cried until her whole body trembled, cried until she could barely breathe. No one knows that the wealthiest family, the Raymonds, have a rule: before officially taking over the family business, the heir must conceal their identity and spend 5 years training outside, experiencing all aspects of life. So, she hid her identity and lived like an ordinary girl, staying in the cheapest rental apartments, eating the simplest meals, and working tirelessly for a meager salary. She endured summers without air conditioning and winters without heating. Gritting her teeth through it all, little did she expect that she would be loved at first sight by Wayne, the heir of the wealthy Stewart family. He pursued her for a full 6 months, exhausting all his romance and patience. On rainy days, he would take off his suit jacket to shield her head, getting himself drenched in the process. When she had a fever, he stayed up all night, changing towels and checking her temperature again and again. And just because she casually mentioned how beautiful baby's breath looked, the next day the office was filled with 999 bouquets of it. Sandra hadn't originally intended to fall in love. After all, her goal was only to complete her training, but Wayne was just too good to her. So good that even she, the daughter of the wealthiest man who was accustomed to luxury and insincerity, began to feel dazed. wondering if perhaps, stripped of the halo of her family background, someone could truly love Sandra for who she was. She remembered the first time he kissed her, with a slight tipsiness, gently pressing her against the car, his breath hot, but his gaze unusually clear. "Sandra, don't avoid me." On her birthday, he reserved the entire top-tier restaurant, only to end up serving a bowl of longevity noodles he had cooked himself. The presentation was rather plain, and his ears turned slightly red, but his tone was domineering. "It's my first time making this. Even if it doesn't taste good, you have to finish it." He shielded her from all harassment, solved every problem for her, and even humbled himself to do things he had never done for anyone else. So, she let down all her defenses, believing she had finally found a pure and genuine love. She even began to imagine that once her trials were over, she would tell him the truth and marry him openly and honorably. But now, this man who claimed to love her had secretly fathered 2 children with another woman and casually remarked, "Marriage and children, there's another candidate." Tears streamed uncontrollably as she crouched in the corner, trembling from head to toe with sobs. All the beliefs she had built over the past 5 years crumbled in an instant. The love she thought she had was, from beginning to end, nothing but a joke. Just as she was crying herself to the point of exhaustion, her phone suddenly vibrated in her pocket. Her hand trembled as she pulled out her phone, where 2 words flashed on the screen: "Home." As soon as the call connected, her mother's voice came through: "Sandra, the 5-year training period is over. You can come back now. The responsibility of the Raymond family should be handed over to you." Sandra wiped her tears hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "Okay, Mom, I'll wrap things up here and come back right away." Her mother paused, then added, "There's one more thing. After you inherit the family estate, according to tradition, you'll need to finalize an arranged marriage partner as soon as possible. As the heir of our Raymond family, your marriage alliance is crucial. Over the past few years, countless families have come to test the waters. Have you met anyone suitable during your time away?" Sandra felt a sharp pain in her heart, and Wayne's face flashed before her eyes. She shook her head vigorously, as if trying to shake off those painful memories. "No, Mom, on the same day I inherit the family fortune, let's also host a husband selection banquet. At the banquet, I will personally choose the most suitable marriage partner for the Raymond family." "All right, your father and I will make the arrangements right away." After hanging up the phone, Sandra didn't know how she made it back to the place she once called home. Every step felt like walking on broken glass, the pain piercing to the core, yet so numb that it hardly felt real. After returning, she began silently packing up all the gifts he had given her over the years: expensive jewelry, limited edition bags, the childish handmade crafts he made himself. One by one, she threw them all into the trash. Just as she finished, the door lock clicked. Wayne walked in, followed by Naomi, who was holding the hand of a girl about 4 years old and carrying a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes in her arms. Sandra's heart tightened suddenly, the pain making it almost impossible for her to breathe. Not only had he kept it from her that he had children with someone else, but now he was actually bringing them straight home. Wayne seemed to be in a good mood and didn't notice anything unusual in the trash can. He naturally wrapped his arm around Sandra's waist and introduced, "Sandra, this is Naomi, my childhood friend, and her 2 children. They just returned from abroad and haven't found a suitable place to stay yet, so they'll be staying with us for a few days." Childhood sweetheart, staying over temporarily. Every word pierced Sandra's heart like a needle. She looked at Naomi's gentle face, which held a trace of barely perceptible smugness, and at the 2 children who shared Wayne's bloodline, feeling a surge of metallic sweetness rise in her throat. Wayne didn't notice her stiffness and turned to Naomi to say, "Naomi, this is Sandra, my girlfriend." At this moment, Naomi, the little girl beside her, looked up, scrutinizing Wayne with a pair of large eyes that closely resembled his, then curled her lips and said in a childish yet malicious voice, "Uncle, is this your girlfriend? I thought she was your family's maid. She smells so poor." Naomi pretended to scold, "Mona, don't talk nonsense." Then she turned to Sandra with an apologetic smile, Sandra, she's just a child and doesn't know any better. Please don't take it to heart. This is my first time at Wayne's place, and I'm not very familiar with it. Could you please show me to the guest room?" Sandra was about to speak when Wayne ruffled her hair, his tone carrying its usual intimate coquetry. "Sandra, could you help me get them settled? I have an important video conference to attend soon." Looking at his matter-of-fact expression, Sandra felt her heart ache to the point of numbness. Without saying a word, she took Naomi and her daughter to the guest room. As soon as they entered the guest room and closed the door, Naomi's polite expression instantly vanished, and she began ordering Sandra around, complaining that the sheets weren't soft enough one moment, and demanding new towels the next. Sandra, thinking she would be leaving soon and wanting to avoid complications, endured it all. After finally getting everything settled, Sandra was about to leave when Naomi stopped her. Naomi rummaged through her suitcase, pulled out a pile of old clothes, and shoved them into Sandra's arms. Sandra, sorry for the trouble of staying here. I don't have anything nice to give you. I don't wear these clothes anymore, so you can have them. Her tone was condescending and sarcastic. You are, after all, Wayne's girlfriend. Dressing so plainly is an embarrassment to him. I heard your family situation isn't great. Even though these are my cast-offs, they're all name brands. They should last you a long time. Sandra looked at the outdated and somewhat worn clothes in her arms and could no longer hold back. She coldly retorted, I appreciate Naomi's kindness. However, these second-hand goods are better suited for you to keep. Naomi hadn't expected her to talk back, and her face immediately darkened. Sandra ignored him and turned to leave the guest room. Back in the bedroom, before long, Wayne returned from his meeting. He hugged Sandra from behind, resting his chin on her neck, and cooed as usual. Don't move, Sandra, let me recharge for a bit. I'm exhausted from a whole day of meetings. In the past, whenever he said this, Sandra would feel both sweet and heartbroken. The Mr. Wayne who dominates the outside world with ruthless tactics. Mr. Wayne only shows such a childish side in front of her. He once said she was his power bank, his safe harbor. Someone he could never live without. But now, those sweet words sound so ironic. Can't live without her. Then how did he and Naomi end up with a child? Sandra stood rigid, her heart aching as if pierced by a knife. Wayne noticed her unusual demeanor, turned her around, cupped her face, and asked softly, What's wrong? Are you upset that I brought Naomi and her family to stay here, disturbing our time alone? He patiently explained, Naomi is the daughter of a family friend, we grew up together. And she just returned to the country alone with 2 children, it's only right that I help her out a bit, don't overthink it, okay? As he spoke, he leaned in to kiss her. Sandra instinctively tried to push him away, but the door was knocked. Naomi's anxious voice came through, Wayne, Mona has been crying non-stop, and nothing I do can calm her down. Please come and take a look. Wayne frowned but still released Sandra. I'll go check. Naomi didn't leave and instead pushed the little girl named Mona inside. Sandra, could you please help me look after Mona? It's inconvenient for me to hold her while carrying my younger brother. With that, without waiting for Sandra to agree, she pulled Wayne along and hurried off. Mona started causing all sorts of trouble as soon as she entered the door, jumping, screaming, and throwing things everywhere. Sandra couldn't stand it any longer and tried to gently persuade her. It's getting late, you should go to sleep. Mona looked at her with a defiant expression. Who are you, a servant? To tell me what to do? I won't sleep, what's it to you? Sandra was somewhat angry. Who taught you to speak like that? Mona not only wasn't afraid, but instead made a face at her. Then ran to the edge of the balcony and said with malicious intent, You're just a shabby servant, completely unworthy of uncle. I want to see what will happen if you don't take good care of me. After saying this, she actually jumped off the balcony. Sandra was greatly shocked in her heart. Without time to think, she rushed forward in a flash and, at the critical moment, grabbed Mona's hand. However, the long-neglected balcony railing couldn't withstand the sudden weight. Emitting a crisp cracking sound before abruptly breaking, Sandra and Mona instantly lost their balance, falling toward the ground below. In the critical moment, Sandra desperately grabbed onto a nearby exposed water pipe with one hand, while her other hand tightly clenched Mona's wrist. The two hung precariously on the exterior wall of the 3rd floor, teetering on the edge. Sandra, Mona. The loud commotion startled Wayne and Naomi inside the house. The two rushed out and turned pale at the sight. Naomi screamed urgently, Wayne, save Mona quickly, she can't hold on much longer, she's only 4 years old, she's our own. Enough. Wayne sharply interrupted her, his gaze complex as he looked at Sandra and Mona suspended in midair. In that split second, he had to make a choice, save Sandra, who was closer to him but holding onto the pipe, or save Mona, who was in a more dangerous position but was his own flesh and blood. Wayne. Save our daughter, hurry. Naomi's heart-wrenching cry tore through the air. Wayne's eyes darkened, he leaned out abruptly, his arm reaching past the struggling Sandra, and precisely grabbed Mona's arm. At the moment he safely pulled Mona up. Sandra, watching his back as he unhesitatingly chose someone else, felt as if her heart had been instantly crushed, her last bit of strength exhausted, her hand gripping the pipe loosened, bang, like a butterfly with broken wings. She fell heavily from the 3rd floor, her head bleeding. In the last second before her consciousness faded into darkness, she seemed to hear Wayne's terrified cry. She woke up again in a hospital bed. With the slightest movement, sharp pain shot through her forehead and arm. She turned her head and saw Wayne sitting by the bed, his brow furrowed, his eyes bloodshot, as if he had been keeping vigil for a long time. Seeing her awake, he immediately leaned in. his voice carrying a barely noticeable hoarseness and guilt. "Sandra, you're awake, how do you feel? Does it hurt anywhere else?" Sandra opened her mouth, but her throat was so dry she couldn't make a sound. Wayne quickly picked up a cotton swab, dipped it in water, and carefully moistened her lips. His movements were still gentle, yet they sent a chilling coldness through Sandra. He set down the water glass, took her uninjured hand, and rubbed the back of it with his thumb, in a low voice. He began to explain, "Sandra, I'm sorry, the situation was urgent, and I only had the strength to pull one person up first. I thought I'd save the child first and come back for you right away. I didn't expect that you couldn't hold on. After all, it was a child. I couldn't just stand by and watch them die. You understand, right?" Sandra listened quietly, her heart feeling as if it were being repeatedly kneaded by a cold hand, the pain so intense it became numb. Understand. She understood his choice to save a child, but she couldn't understand why, at the critical moment between life and death, he had chosen without hesitation Naomi's daughter, not her, whom he called his greatest love. She remembered the countless times he had whispered in her ear, "Sandra, you are the most important person to me. Nothing and no one is more precious than you." How ironic it seemed now that child of his blood, that life he had created with another, was clearly more important than her, his greatest love. She didn't expose his lie, only closed her eyes. "I'm tired, I want to rest." Wayne watched her distant, cold demeanor, the guilt in his eyes deepening. He tucked the blanket snugly around her and said softly, "All right, rest, I'll stay here with you." In the days that followed, Wayne set aside most of his company affairs and personally stayed by the hospital bed to take care of Sandra. He fed her water and medicine, peeled fruit for her, and even helped her bathe. His thoughtfulness was as meticulous as ever. In the past, Sandra would have melted into a puddle of tenderness, but now, every time he drew near, it reminded her of the choice he made on the balcony, and her heart felt as if it were being cut by a knife. Moreover, his company never lasted long. The phone always rings at the right moment, Naomi's gentle yet anxious voice seeping through the receiver. "Their daughter, frightened, cries every night. Their son seems to have a slight fever. She simply can't handle it all alone." In the end, Wayne had no choice but to rush back and forth between the hospital and home, watching him leave again and again for another woman and their child. Sandra felt the hole in her heart grow wider and wider, with cold winds whistling through it. Finally, one day, when he once again received a call and looked troubled, Sandra spoke up, her voice filled with utter exhaustion and sorrow. "Wayne, go take care of them. There's no need to run back and forth anymore. I don't need you here anymore." In the past, if she showed even the slightest displeasure, he would become extremely anxious, doing everything he could to comfort her and would never actually leave. But this time, he only remained silent for a few seconds, then gently hugged her and said a weak, powerless sentence, "Don't overthink it, I'll be back soon." After saying that, he actually turned and left. Watching his retreating back as he left without hesitation, Sandra suddenly laughed. She laughed and laughed, but then tears began to pour out uncontrollably, soaking the snow-white pillow. A few days later, Sandra was able to get out of bed and walk around. She went to get her own medicine, and on her way back, passing by the emergency exit, she overheard Wayne's hushed voice on the phone inside. The person on the other end of the line seemed to be one of his close friends. The voice was loud, carrying a tone of teasing and confusion. "Wayne, didn't you used to hate that weepy little girl the most? You said she looked like Naomi and found her annoying just by looking at her. How come you're willing to let your precious Sandra get hurt like that for her sake now?" Wayne was silent for a moment before speaking. "No matter how much I dislike her, she's still my flesh and blood. The family forced me to have her with Naomi, and at first, I resisted, but it's been 4 years. After raising her all this time, I've developed feelings after all. Blood is thicker than water. I can't just stand by and watch my own child come to harm." "Wow, you've really changed your tune. So by your logic, Naomi's son is the legitimate heir, right? The Stewart family's vast fortune will all go to him eventually. And what about Naomi? After sleeping with you so many times and bearing you a son and daughter, shouldn't she at least get some official status?" The corridor fell silent for a long time, so long that Sandra's heart almost stopped beating. Then, she heard Wayne's low but clear voice, without denial. "Yeah, I'll marry her." "Holy shit, I actually guessed right," the brother exclaimed. "Then what about Sandra? Weren't you madly in love with her, acting like you couldn't live without her?" "I love her. I probably won't love anyone like this again in my lifetime. But her status is too low, the daughter of a drunkard, a seriously ill mother, raised in the slums, with such a background. She's destined never to enter the Stewart family's door. She can only stay by my side as she is now. I'll cherish her, spoil her, give her the best life, but she'll forever Only be a golden canary kept in the shadows, a golden canary kept in the shadows. These 8 words, like venom-tipped ice picks, plunged viciously into Sandra's heart. A wave of desolation washed over her, leaving her chilled to the bone. Wayne, oh Wayne, the truth is, it was never that I, Sandra, was unworthy of you or the Stewart family. It was you, Wayne, who were unworthy of my sincere heart. We were just that close, to growing old together openly and rightfully. She staggered away, her heart as dead as ashes. A few days later, Sandra was discharged from the hospital. Wayne came to pick her up, his tone carrying a note of compensation. Sandra, to make up for not spending enough time with you these past few days, I'll take you to an auction to relax. Whatever catches your eye, I'll buy it for you. At the auction, Wayne indeed made grand gestures, bidding on several expensive pieces of jewelry for Sandra, which prompted continuous teasing from the brothers around him. Wayne, are you even giving us a chance to live? You're snatching up all the good stuff. Exactly. I wanted to buy a birthday gift for the old man, but I couldn't even get my hands on one. Some spoke with a tone of disdain, saying to Wayne, Wayne, no offense, but is it really necessary to be so attentive to a woman from the slums? These jewels won't even show their true value on her. Wayne frowned, casting a cold glance at the man. The other immediately raised his hands in surrender. But the contempt in his tone remained unchanged. All right, I'll stop. TSK, she's just some shabby girl. Only you would protect her like she's the apple of your eye. How could she possibly be worthy of you, the young master of the Stewart family? These words, Sandra had heard them for 5 years. Wayne occasionally tried to stop them, but they still acted this way. But thinking about it now, if Wayne didn't also subconsciously agree with this point, how could they have been so unrestrained? At that moment, Naomi, wearing an elegant custom-made gown, appeared at the entrance of the lounge just in time and greeted everyone with a smile. What a coincidence. You're all here. Everyone immediately responded warmly and asked her why she had come. Naomi smoothed her hair at the temples, her smile gentle yet carrying a hint of grievance. Ever since having the child, I've been busy taking care of the baby all day and haven't had the chance to dress up properly. It's rare for me to go out today, so I wanted to pick out some jewelry for myself. Everyone immediately flattered. MS, Naomi, you're naturally beautiful, even without makeup. You're miles ahead of some people. Exactly, no matter how many jewels some people pile on, they can't cover up that tacky, impoverished aura. Sandra listened in silence. These comparisons and sarcastic remarks pierced her already riddled heart like needles. The second half of the auction began, with several new pieces of jewelry being presented. The crowd teased, Wayne, even if you don't leave us any room to breathe, you should at least save one piece for Naomi, shouldn't you? It's rare for her to come out. Wayne smiled and indeed did not raise his paddle again. Those pieces of jewelry ultimately ended up in Naomi's collection. Naomi smugly glanced at Sandra. Finally, the grand finale was a dazzling antique crown. Naomi, her eyes lit up, clearly extremely fond of it, and she began fiercely competing with several bidders. The price soared all the way until it broke through 1 billion. Sandra, watching this absurd scene, she couldn't help but let out a light laugh. Naomi immediately frowned and looked over. MS, Sandra, what are you laughing at? Sandra said calmly. Nothing, I just find it a bit amusing that everyone is competing to bid on a replica. Naomi frowned. What do you mean? Who told you this is fake? The others also cast dissatisfied glances. Sandra calmly listed several professional appraisal doubts, with precise details and clear logic. The final piece of damning evidence she didn't mention was that the real crown was safely stored in her Raymond family's private museum. She was just kindly reminding everyone, not wanting anyone to be taken for a fool. However, after hearing this, instead of believing her, the crowd burst into even louder laughter. Ha ha ha, what did she say? A replica? What does someone from the slums know about antique jewelry? Reading a few magazines and suddenly you think you're a master appraiser. Naomi also shook her head with a laugh, saying to Wayne, Wayne, you really need to take the time to teach MS, Sandra, how to identify jewelry properly. It's one thing to say these things in front of us, but if she ever embarrasses herself in front of your parents, that would really be. Wayne's expression darkened slightly. He took Sandra's hand, his tone carrying a hint of barely concealed awkwardness and reproach. Sandra, that's enough. If you don't understand something, don't just speak nonsense. At that moment, Sandra's heart sank completely into an ice cellar. With his knowledge and discernment, it was impossible for him to be completely unaware of those questionable points. He was just prejudiced, thinking her status was too low to understand these upper-class things, so he didn't even bother with basic judgment and directly concluded that she was talking nonsense. She looked at him, her heart filled with sorrow. Since he always felt she didn't belong in their world and that she wasn't good enough for him, why did he bother pursuing her in the first place? In the end, Naomi won the crown with a sky-high bid of $1 billion. Sandra didn't want to watch this farce any longer, so she got up and went to the restroom. Just as she finished washing her hands, Naomi followed her in and blocked her way. Sandra, how did it feel pretending to be high society just now? Failed. Didn't you? Naomi sneered, her face full of mockery. Don't think reading a few appraisal books makes you an expert. Things like refinement and depth require long-term exposure. Someone like you, coming from the slums, should just keep quiet if you don't understand, so you don't embarrass Wayne. Sandra couldn't be bothered with her and tried to step around her to leave. Naomi grabbed her arm, leaned in close, and lowered her voice with a venomous tone. Let me tell you the truth. Not only was I Wayne's childhood sweetheart, but I've also slept with him countless times. I've borne him a son and a daughter. Yes, the very two living in your house right now. Because the Stewart family looks down on you, they think you're not good enough for Wayne. That's why they forced him to have heirs with me. Wayne agreed to it. Do you understand what that means? It means that in his heart, you, Sandra, are just a hidden canary he can play with as he pleases. Marriage and children. He would only choose a woman from a suitable background like me. Every word was like a poison-tipped dagger, brutally stabbing into Sandra's heart. Her face was deathly pale. And she didn't want to say anything. She forcefully shook off Naomi and tried to leave, but the next second, a crisp slap sound came from behind. Sandra turned around in shock, only to see Naomi covering her own face, her eyes instantly reddening, with a clear palm print starkly visible on her cheek. Before Sandra could react, Wayne rushed in upon hearing the noise. What happened? Naomi immediately pointed at Sandra with teary eyes, crying as pitifully as a rain-soaked pear blossom. Wayne. Maybe it's because last time you saved Mona but didn't save MS. Sandra, she held a grudge, that's why she slapped me. Wayne looked at Sandra in disbelief. Sandra, is this true? Sandra, seeing the undisguised suspicion in his eyes, her heart ached so badly it almost spasmed. Before, no matter who bullied her, he would stand by her side without hesitation, even telling others, I'm here to back Sandra up, not to be fair. But now, her voice trembled. What if I said it wasn't me who hit her, and that she staged it herself? Wayne frowned deeply, his tone tinged with anger. Sandra, I've already explained clearly what happened on the balcony before. Are you really going to take out your anger on her mother just because you're upset with a 4-year-old child? Naomi has just given birth not long ago, and her body is still very weak. How could you lay a hand on her? Apologize to her. Sandra's heart ached to the point of numbness. As she looked at the man she had loved for 5 years, she felt nothing but overwhelming strangeness and absurdity. She stubbornly shook her head. I didn't hit her. I won't apologize. After saying that, she was about to leave Wayne, but he grabbed her wrist firmly, the force so strong it hurt her, his tone cold and leaving no room for doubt. Sandra, apologize. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving today. Watching him speak harshly to her in order to defend another woman. The last trace of love in her heart finally shattered completely. Sandra suddenly laughed, a laugh filled with desolation and despair. She looked at Wayne, then glanced at the smug Naomi standing behind him, and said softly, Fine, I apologize. I'm sorry, MS. Naomi, I shouldn't have hit you. Is that enough? Every word felt like it was slowly tearing her heart apart. After saying this, with red-rimmed eyes, she forcefully shook off Wayne's hand, turned around, and rushed out of the restroom. Just as she stepped out, she nearly collided with someone. The person was a well-dressed middle-aged man. When he saw Sandra's face, he clearly froze for a moment, then his expression turned to one of extreme surprise and respect. Instinctively, he started to bow and speak, Young miss. The next second, Wayne also followed out of the restroom, frowning as he asked, What young lady? Do you know him? The man saw Wayne, paused for a moment. And just as he was about to speak, someone called out to him from a distance. He had no choice but to give Sandra a complex yet respectful look, nodded slightly in acknowledgement, and hurried away. Naomi immediately stepped forward, linking her arm with Wayne's, and said softly, What young lady? Were they referring to me? The person just now seemed to be one of my father's business partners. Wayne looked at Naomi, then at Sandra's pale profile, and seemed to accept the explanation without further inquiry. He grabbed Sandra's hand, his tone softening somewhat. Sandra, since you've already apologized, let's consider this matter over. Let's go back together. I spoke too harshly earlier, but it's because you went too far. Sandra snatched her hand back abruptly, not even glancing at him, turned and walked away. Sandra, Wayne hurried after her. Just as the three of them reached the square outside the venue, suddenly, a cracking sound came from above their heads. Everyone looked up simultaneously, only to see a massive LED advertising screen crashing down directly toward them. In the blink of an eye, Wayne almost instinctively, he shoved the closer Naomi aside and shielded her behind him. Meanwhile, Sandra, standing a bit farther away, only had time to see Wayne's back as he unhesitatingly chose to protect Naomi, and the look in Naomi's eyes, shaken but with a hint of secret triumph, the next moment. Immense impact and darkness completely engulfed her. Sandra woke up again to find herself lying in her familiar bed, her back burning with pain. Wayne sat by the bed, and when he saw her wake up, a flicker of guilt passed through his eyes. He began to explain, "Sandra, you're awake. The billboard fell so suddenly. I only instinctively saved the person closest to me. I'm sorry. Please don't be angry with me." Sandra closed her eyes and turned her head to the other side. Not even wanting to give him a single glance, what was there to explain? She knew the truth all too well. There was a time when no matter where she was or how far she was from him, he would always find her first and protect her. But now he has changed. He split the heart that once belonged only to her in two, giving half to another who bore him children. During these days of her recovery, Wayne seemed to want to make amends, often staying by her side, but she remained silent in response. Soon, it was time for Naomi's youngest son's full moon banquet. Wayne hosted a grand banquet at the villa, with a large gathering of guests. Even his parents made a special trip from the old estate to attend, watching the Stewart family parents shower Naomi and the baby with warmth and doting care. Sandra couldn't help but recall the scene when Wayne first took her to meet his parents. Back then, after the Stewart family parents learned about her family background, the smiles on their faces instantly vanished. Their attitude turned as cold as if she were an unrelated servant, making the entire meal unbearably oppressive. The contrast now is utterly ironic. At the banquet, Wayne gave Naomi a full moon gift of an extremely rare pink diamond jewelry set worth a fortune. Meanwhile, the Stewart family parents actually gave a piece of high-quality jade pendant as a gift. Wayne's mom took Naomi's hand and said affectionately, "Naomi, this is the Stewart family heirloom passed down to daughters-in-law. Today, we're entrusting it to you." Naomi pretended to be overwhelmed by the unexpected honor and tried to decline, but Wayne's mom cast a cold glance toward Sandra standing in the corner, speaking just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "In our hearts, we've long regarded you as our own daughter-in-law. Some people, after all, will never be presentable enough." Beside her, Wayne noticed Sandra's low spirits and leaned close to her ear, whispering comfortingly, "Sandra, don't overthink it. My parents did try to set me up with Naomi before, but in my heart, there's only you. Don't take those old-fashioned ideas to heart." Sandra sneered inwardly. Only her. Then did his child with Naomi just pop out of a rock? She didn't say anything. Only feeling the air here was suffocating. Wayne, seeing her pale complexion, he asked softly, "Are you feeling cold? Let me go upstairs and get you a shawl." Shortly after he left, a sudden exclamation came from the center of the banquet. "Naomi, my jade pendant. The family heirloom Aunt Pay just gave me is missing." The entire crowd erupted in an uproar. At that moment, Naomi's close friend immediately jumped out, pointing at Sandra and shrilling, "I just saw a mess." Sandra lurking suspiciously around Naomi earlier, "It must be her who stole it," another chimed in. "Yes, we saw it too. She must be jealous of Naomi." As she spoke, Naomi's best friend actually rushed forward with several women, intending to forcibly search Sandra. "What are you doing? Get away from me." Sandra was both shocked and furious, struggling desperately. But how could one person overpower several? In front of everyone, her dress was roughly torn open, and the humiliation and anger made her whole body tremble. Sure enough, someone had felt the cold jade pendant hidden in the inner layer of her undergarments. It was her all along. The crowd erupted in gasps and scornful whispers. The Stewart family's parents turned pale with rage, demanding sharply, "Sandra, we of the Stewart family have treated you well. Why would you steal?" Sandra pulled her torn clothes tighter, her nails digging deep into her palms, yet her voice remained eerily calm. "I didn't steal. You're still making excuses." Naomi's daughter Mona suddenly rushed over and started kicking Sandra's shins. "You wicked woman, you stole my mom's things. I'll beat you to death." Children don't know their own strength when they hit, and the kicks sent searing pain through Sandra's unhealed wounds. She couldn't take it anymore and instinctively shoved Mona away with force. Unexpectedly, Mona lost her balance, stumbling backward and crashing right into a tower of stacked champagne glasses beside her. Crash! The sound of shattering glass and a child's scream rang out simultaneously. Mona fell into the pile of broken glass and was instantly cut all over, covered in blood. "Mona!" Naomi screamed, rushing over. The Stewart family parents grew even more furious at the sight. "How dare you? Not only did you steal and refuse to admit it, but you also dared to harm a child." "Someone bring the family punishment. Give her 20 lashes. Let her learn her lesson." At this moment, Wayne hurried downstairs with a shawl, and his face changed drastically at the chaotic scene. What happened? Wayne's mom immediately exaggerated the story. pointing at the blood-soaked, crying Mona and the disheveled Sandra. "Wayne, look, this vicious woman, she stole Naomi's family heirloom and hurt Mona like this. She must not be let off lightly." Wayne's gaze fell on Sandra. Complex and hard to decipher, shock, suspicion, and a trace of barely noticeable struggle. In the end, his Adam's apple bobbed, but he didn't ask her anything, didn't defend her at all. Instead, he just tightly hugged the Mona in his arms, his voice cold and devoid of any warmth. "Let's get the child to the hospital first." He actually didn't stop. Just like that, he tacitly allowed his parents to take the law into their own hands against her, tacitly agreed that she was the one to blame. Sandra watched his resolute, unhesitating retreating figure, feeling as if her entire world had crumbled before her eyes. Her heart felt as if it were being tightly gripped by an invisible hand, then suddenly crushed. The pain was so intense she could barely breathe, her fingertips turning icy cold. She was roughly dragged to the backyard by the Stewart family's bodyguards. The icy whip lashed against her body again and again, old wounds layered with new ones. The pain so intense she nearly passed out. The Stewart family parents stood by watching coldly, while Wayne's mom sneered even more harshly. "We've already looked into your background, a drunkard father, a mother critically ill in bed, trash crawling out of a destitute, broken home. Our Wayne has been exceptional since childhood, a proud son of heaven. Low-life scum like you aren't even fit to shine his shoes. Be sensible and get lost on your own. Don't force us to make a move and strip you of the last shred of your dignity." Sandra's consciousness gradually blurred amidst the excruciating pain and humiliation, until it was completely swallowed by boundless darkness. When she woke again, she was still on that cold bed. Her wounds had been roughly treated, but the pain remained unbearable. As soon as she opened her eyes, Wayne pushed the door open, grabbed her wrist without a word, and started dragging her out. "Wayne, what are you doing? Let go of me." Sandra struggled weakly, the movement pulling at her wounds, causing cold sweat to break out from the pain. Wayne seemed oblivious to her suffering, dragging her half forcibly to the hospital and shoving her straight into the blood collection room. "Draw her blood. Mona has lost too much blood and needs a transfusion urgently. They have the same blood type," he commanded the nurse coldly, his tone brooking no argument. Sandra widened her eyes in disbelief, her voice hoarse and broken from weakness and shock. "Wayne, can't you see the whip marks all over my body? I just narrowly escaped death. How can I possibly give blood in this state?" Wayne took a deep breath, trying to suppress his irritation, and said in his usual coaxing tone, "Sandra, be good, just a little blood. It'll be fine. Mona is just a child, she needs blood to survive. You can't just stand by and let her die. I won't give blood. Why should I use my blood to save her? Why?" All the pent-up grievances, anger, and despair erupted at this moment as she screamed in her resistance. Wayne lost the last shred of his patience, abruptly grabbing her wrist and shouting angrily, "On what grounds? On the grounds that Mona was injured because you pushed her. This is all what you owe her. It's the mistake you made. Today, whether you're willing or not, this blood will be drawn." He forcibly restrained the struggling Sandra and had the nurse draw her blood. As the needle pierced her vein, Sandra winced in pain, her already weak body suffering even more. The nurse, observing her condition, hesitated and said, "Mr. Wayne, this young lady is too weak. We can't draw any more blood." "Keep drawing." "Not enough," Wayne said in an icy tone. In the end, Sandra passed out again due to excessive blood loss and excruciating pain. When she woke up, the hospital room was still empty except for her. The nurse told her that Mr. Wayne was in the next room taking care of Ms. Naomi and the child. He never came over, only sent her a message. "Sandra, I know you're still angry, but Mona's injury was caused by you, and you must take responsibility for it. Take some time to calm down first. Stop making a scene. I will always love you, always love me." Seeing those words, Sandra suddenly laughed, laughing until her whole body trembled, laughing until her wounds split open and bled, laughing until no more tears would fall. His love was allowing his parents to whip her until she was covered in wounds. His love was ignoring her near-death state, pressing her down to draw blood to save the life of his child with another woman. His love was promising forever while starting a family with another woman. Such love is too cruel. She, Sandra, cannot bear it. Disappointment had long accumulated, and now even despair felt redundant. After a few days of recuperating, her body had recovered somewhat. Sandra didn't tell anyone and quietly went through the discharge procedures herself. Just as she returned to the villa, her phone rang. "Sandra, is everything over there taken care of? It's time to come home." Sandra stood in the empty living room, looking around with a calm and unruffled gaze. She took a deep breath, her voice clear and composed. "Yes, everything's taken care of. I'll be right back." After hanging up the phone, she simply packed a few of her own belongings, pulled her suitcase, and left the place without hesitation, leaving not a single trace behind. At the hospital, Wayne learned that Sandra had been discharged early. While taking care of Naomi and the child, he kept sending messages to Sandra. Sandra, why did you leave the hospital so soon? Is your wound still hurting? Are you still mad at me? Why aren't you replying? Did you fall asleep? One by one, I sent them out, but they all sank without a trace. Wayne frowned slightly, a faint, indescribable unease and strangeness flickering in his heart. This wasn't like her. In the past, no matter how angry she was, if he coaxed her like this, she would eventually soften and respond. Fortunately, a few days later, Naomi and the child were finally able to be discharged from the hospital. Wayne immediately took them back to the villa, all the while thinking about how to explain his helplessness to Sandra, but when he pushed open the door, he found that Sandra's room was empty, and all her belongings were gone. Only on the living room coffee table lay a simple note. Wayne, let's break up. Wayne stared at the note, first stunned, then flew into a rage. He crumpled the note, threw it to the ground, and immediately wanted to send someone to find her. Naomi quickly stopped him. Wayne, don't be hasty. She's clearly throwing a tantrum. You've spoiled her too much these past 5 years. You've ruined her. She keeps throwing fits and running away from home. It's time you let her cool off a bit. She paused, her tone carrying a confident disdain. Have you forgotten about her family? After 5 years of living in luxury with you, she's long since grown accustomed to a life of comfort. Where could she possibly go? She has no money on her. She'll definitely suffer for a few days outside and then come crawling back on her own. If you go looking for her now, you'll only encourage her arrogance. Naomi's words were like a soothing pill, calming the wildly growing panic in his heart. Indeed, Sandra, where could she go without him? Having grown accustomed to a life of luxury, how could she truly bear to leave? This so-called breakup was nothing more than a fit of pique, a ploy to make him grovel and coax her back. He couldn't let her lead him by the nose. You're right. He took a deep breath, his eyes regaining a hint of cold sharpness and control. I was too impatient. She's taking advantage of my love for her. Let her cool off for a few days. She'll come back. For the next week, he forced himself not to look for her, staying at the villa to take care of Naomi and the child. But the restlessness and unease in his heart grew with each passing day, until this day. A few of his brothers came to find him excitedly. Wayne, stop holing up at home. There's a huge event to see. One brother threw an arm over his shoulder and said excitedly, have you heard? The mysterious heiress of the richest man Raymond's family, who has been out of the public eye for 5 years, has completed her training period and is making her official debut today. The inheritance ceremony and spouse selection banquet are being held on the top floor of the SS building. Yeah. They've arranged an extremely grand event. They've invited almost all the top unmarried talented elites in the city. It's said that they'll choose a marriage alliance partner right at the banquet. Brothers, we all got the invitations. Let's go, let's try our luck together. Wayne furrowed his brows even more upon hearing this and waved his hand dismissively, showing no interest. Not going, I'm not in the mood. His mind was filled with irritation over where Sandra could possibly be, along with an instinctive aversion to such business marriage occasions. Naomi then linked her arm with his and gently persuaded him. Wayne, let's go. I want to broaden my horizons too, to see just how distinguished the legendary billionaire's daughter really is. I heard the scale is unprecedented. Maybe we can even get to know her. In the end, Wayne was worn down and reluctantly agreed to accompany them. The banquet hall was extravagantly luxurious, filled with celebrities, and everyone marveled at the wealth and influence of Raymond's family. Naomi was dazzled by the spectacle, while Wayne's brothers rubbed their hands in anticipation, hoping to catch the eye of the billionaire's daughter. Only Wayne remained uninterested, holding his glass in a corner, his thoughts already drifting to Sandra, who was nowhere to be found. At this moment, the host stepped onto the stage and announced in a voice trembling with excitement, "Distinguished guests, next, please give your warmest applause to welcome the sole heir of the Raymond family, who has returned from her training, the young lady of the Raymond family." All the lights in the venue focused on the top of the spiral staircase. Amid everyone's eager anticipation, a girl wearing an ice blue floor-length gown, with stunning beauty and a graceful figure, slowly descended the stairs. The entire venue instantly fell silent, leaving only gasps and sighs of admiration. Wayne casually glanced up. The next second, the wine glass in his hand fell to the ground with a sharp crack, shattering into pieces. His eyes were fixed on the familiar figure on the staircase, a figure etched deep into his bones. His pupils contracted violently to their limits, filled with extreme shock, disbelief, and an overwhelming wave of immense panic. Sandra. How could it be Sandra, that canary he thought came from the slums, with nowhere to go without him, surviving only by clinging to him? that woman he believed could only be kept outside due to mismatched social status, even allowing others to look down on her, turned out to be the Raymond family's sole heir to this vast business empire. Is she the daughter of the wealthiest man, standing atop the clouds and admired by all at this very moment? After the overwhelming shock came a tidal wave of panic, nearly drowning him. A chilling fear, named eternal loss, seized his heart like countless icy tentacles, gripping his throat and leaving him breathless. Instinctively, he wanted to rush over, to grab her and demand an explanation, to hold her tightly in his arms and confirm this wasn't an illusion. But the moment he moved, he was subtly separated by the surging crowd and the sharp-eyed bodyguards in black suits who had quietly appeared at some point. Like a small boat adrift and out of control, he was isolated beyond the sea of people, forced to watch that radiant figure step by step move toward the center of the stage, growing further and further away from him. The brothers beside him were also dumbfounded, their excitement and frivolity completely frozen on their faces, turning into extreme shock and disbelief. They looked at Sandra on the stage, then at the devastated Wayne, their faces alternating between red and pale, recalling all the mockery and contempt they had directed at that girl from the slums over the past 5 years. They now felt their faces burning with shame, utterly mortified. Naomi turned as pale as a sheet, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. Even her meticulously applied makeup couldn't conceal the panic and fear emanating from the depths of her bones, her greatest reliance. Her family background instantly became as laughable as dust in the face of a true top-tier wealthy heir. She dug her nails deep into her palm, trying to use the pain to suppress the overwhelming urge to scream from the brink of collapse. She suddenly looked at Wayne, only to find his gaze completely fixed on Sandra, as if magnetically drawn. In his eyes, she saw an intensity she had never witnessed before: overwhelming shock, immense regret, and a devastating panic that made her heart sink to the depths. On the stage, the inheritance ceremony was solemnly proceeding. Sandra calmly and unhurriedly, in the presence of lawyers and the elders of the Raymond family, signed the documents and received the seal symbolizing authority. Throughout the entire process, she carried herself with an undeniable presence, steady and dignified, as if she were born to command it all. Her gaze occasionally swept lightly across the room, pausing briefly when it passed over the direction where Wayne was standing. However, there was no emotion in her eyes, no hatred, no resentment, no triumphant satisfaction, not even a ripple of feeling. It was as calm as if she were looking at a complete stranger, an utterly insignificant passerby. Wayne, his heart tightened abruptly under that gaze, the pain so intense he nearly doubled over. Then, Sandra stepped up to the microphone, her clear, cold voice amplified through the speakers, resonating in every corner and striking deep into everyone's hearts. Thank you, esteemed guests, for gracing us with your presence today to witness my succession of the Raymond family. Furthermore, in accordance with tradition, I will take this opportunity today to select a marriage partner who can stand alongside my Raymond family and journey forward with us into the future. The phrase marriage partner struck like 4 venom-tipped ice daggers, piercing deep into Wayne's heart. He suddenly looked up, his eyes bloodshot, staring in disbelief at the woman on the stage who was both familiar and a stranger. What did she say? Choosing a husband, an alliance marriage? No, absolutely not. She is his. She is Wayne's. How could she go and choose someone else? The entire venue instantly erupted in excitement. Countless young talents burst with fervent light in their eyes, straightening their clothes and eagerly preparing, trying to catch the attention of the queen high above. And Wayne only felt darkness clouding his vision, a buzzing in his ears, as if the entire world was fading away from him. The composure and pride he had painstakingly maintained were utterly shattered in that moment by her casual, offhand remark. The spouse selection banquet officially began. The atmosphere in the banquet hall reached its peak. Elaborately prepared segments unfolded one by one, with young talents sparing no effort, some showcasing their intellect, others displaying witty conversation, and some directly flaunting their wealth, all in hopes of winning even a hint of Sandra's favor. Sandra sat in the main seat with an indifferent expression, occasionally whispering a few words to her parents beside her. Her gaze swept over the eager faces like a queen inspecting her domain, carrying a natural sense of detachment and scrutiny. Wayne stood on the outskirts of the crowd, like a desperate beast trapped in a cage. He watched those men surrounding her, saw her offering even just polite smiles to others, and jealousy and panic burned through his insides like venomous flames. Those eyes that once only gazed at him were now looking at others. That person who once only acted coy and dependent on him was now going to choose someone else to spend her life with. No, he would never allow it. Sandra, she's mine, she can only be mine. His eyes bloodshot, he muttered to himself as the strings of reason snapped one by one. Naomi clutched his arm desperately, her voice trembling with tears and fear. "Wayne, don't be impulsive. This is Raymond's house. We can't afford to provoke them. Calm down." But her was like cold water dripping into boiling oil, only making him more frenzied. Finally, when a young master from an influential family tried to invite Sandra to dance, and Sandra didn't immediately refuse. Wayne's last shred of reason completely snapped. He violently shoved Naomi aside and, as if gone mad, pushed through the crowd, desperately charging toward the main seat. His movements were too sudden, his force too great, knocking over trays held by several waiters. The sound of shattering glass and plates, along with startled exclamations, instantly shattered the harmonious atmosphere of the banquet. "Stop him." The Raymond family's bodyguards reacted extremely quickly and immediately stepped forward to block his path, but Wayne seemed to feel no obstacles at all. Relying on astonishing strength and a frenzied drive, he actually broke through the bodyguards' interception by sheer force, staggering forward until he reached Sandra and blocked her way. The entire room erupted in an uproar. All eyes were fixed on this sudden turn of events. The music came to an abrupt halt. Wayne, with slightly disheveled hair, wrinkled suit, red-rimmed eyes, and rapid breathing, stared intently at Sandra, his voice hoarse and broken beyond recognition. "Sandra, is it really you? How could? Please let me explain. Everything before was a misunderstanding." He tremblingly reached out his hand, trying to grasp hers, as if it were his only lifeline. Sandra, her eyes turned icy cold the moment he charged toward her. The instant he reached out his hand, she swiftly and decisively withdrew hers, placing it on her lap, avoiding his touch. She lifted her gaze, her eyes as cold as frost-edged blades, filled with undisguised aloofness and disgust. "Mr. Wayne," her voice was clear and cold, carrying through the microphone with an intangible pressure. "Please show some self-respect. You've broken so many of my things. Are we really that familiar?" Wayne, his heart shrank from the coldness in her eyes, and he defended himself urgently. "Sandra, I know I was wrong. I'll make it up to you. I'll pay for everything that was broken today, no matter the cost. But I can't stand to see you choose someone else. I'll go crazy. You know the whole truth, don't you? That's why you left me. I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were before. All those things I said didn't know who I was." Sandra interrupted him, a faint yet deeply mocking curve lifting the corner of her lips. Her voice rang clear in the ears of everyone present. "So, Mr. Wayne's love is conditional, is it? Because I am Sandra, the daughter of the Raymond family. That's why I'm now worthy of you lowering yourself, standing here, putting on this guilt-ridden, pained expression, trying to win me back." She leaned forward slightly, her gaze sharp as a blade, each word piercing straight to the heart. "If I were still the girl from the slums you thought I was, the one with a drunken father, a sick mother, and a broken home, Sandra, would I then deserve to be abandoned by you, to have my blood drawn to save the child you had with someone else, to be looked down upon and humiliated by others with your permission, forever only fit to be your hidden canary?" Every word was like a resounding slap, striking Wayne hard across the face. It was like a thunderclap exploding in the quiet banquet hall, drawing countless shocked, disdainful, and probing gazes. Along with hushed whispers, Wayne instantly turned as pale as a sheet, his lips trembling, but not a single word could escape them. Her words had brutally laid bare the most hidden, most despicable calculations and baseness in his heart, exposing them for all to see. All his explanations and apologies now seemed so feeble and laughable. I'm not," he struggled in vain. Sandra had already lost patience and didn't even glance at him again. She coldly instructed the bodyguards who quickly gathered around, "Please escort this gentleman out. Take stock of all today's losses and prepare a detailed list. Make sure Mr. Wayne compensates for every last penny, not a single cent less." "Yes, miss." The bodyguards immediately stepped forward and firmly, unquestionably escorted Wayne away. "Sandra, no, you can't choose someone else. You're mine. You can only be mine." Wayne completely lost control, struggling and roaring with bloodshot eyes, looking like a madman, causing gasps of surprise all around. However, Raymond family's bodyguards were well trained and unceremoniously restrained him, half dragging him out of the banquet hall. Wayne desperately looked back, only to see Sandra coldly stand up and resolutely walk away, not even pausing for a second for him. She calmly instructed her assistant, "The husband selection banquet ends here today. After cleaning up the venue, we'll reschedule it for another day. The ceremony will be held another day." These words struck like a final death knell. Shattering all his hopes, he was unceremoniously escorted out of the Raymond family estate and thrown onto the cold ground. Behind him, the heavy gates slowly closed, completely cutting off that dazzling, brilliant world that no longer had anything to do with him. Under the night sky, he roared in pain and resentment like a wounded beast, But it could no longer bring back even a single glance from that person, forcibly and embarrassingly escorted out of Raymond family estate. Thrown onto the cold, hard ground, Wayne seemed to feel no pain, struggling to his feet, his crimson eyes fixed intently on the slowly closing gilded gate that completely severed him from the dazzling world inside. He let out a pained roar like a trapped beast. "Sandra, Sandra, come out, listen to my explanation." He threw himself at the gate, pounding on it frantically, his voice hoarse and broken, drawing the vigilant and icy stares of the estate security guards. "Sir, please leave immediately, or we will be forced to take action." The security guard's voice held not a trace of warmth. Wayne seemed to have all his strength drained away, staggering backward before finally collapsing into the car. His phone vibrated frantically. It was Naomi calling. He didn't even glance at it, swiping to decline immediately. A massive wave of panic and loss, like a tsunami, instantly engulfed him. He couldn't believe it, nor could he accept it. That girl he thought couldn't live without him, the one he deemed of lowly birth, was actually the daughter of the prestigious Raymond family. And what had he done to her? He abruptly started the car, the engine roaring, yet he had no idea where to go. He frantically dialed Sandra's number, over and over, but was met only with the cold, monotonous message, "The number you have dialed is powered off." He sent her messages, from incoherent apologies to humble pleas to desperate questions. But all of them sank like stones into the sea, without a single response. "Investigate, find out for me. Where is she? Raymond's family, where have they hidden her?" He roared uncontrollably at his assistant on the other end of the phone, his voice distorted by extreme fear. However, despite using all his connections and resources, the feedback he received only deepened his despair time and time again. The Raymond family had shielded her completely airtight, leaving no trace to be found at any possible location. He attempted to contact Raymond family's top executives, but their attitude was polite yet distant, responding formulaically with "the young lady's whereabouts cannot be disclosed." It was then that he realized, in the face of a truly top-tier wealthy family, the power of his steward family seemed so pale and insignificant. He was like a trapped beast that had lost its way, driving aimlessly through the city until he finally stopped in front of a bar they used to frequent. He needed alcohol to numb the bone-deep pain and panic. In the private room, one glass of strong liquor after another was poured down, yet it did nothing to extinguish the flames in his heart. Instead, it only made the regret and despair burn more fiercely. A few brothers rushed over upon hearing the news. Seeing him in such a disheveled and despondent state, their feelings were complicated. Some of them had mocked Sandra back then, and now their families were facing more or less minor troubles from the Raymond family's camp, leaving them overwhelmed. The others, who had neither supported nor intervened at the time, looked at Wayne with a mix of sympathy, an indescribable sigh, and a faint trace of resentment. "Wayne, just let it go," one of the brothers sighed and poured him a drink. "The Raymond family, they're not someone we can afford to mess with. If we had known back then." "Ah, it's too late to say anything now." Another person, who had previously spoken the most harshly, now looked embarrassed and couldn't help muttering under his breath, "If we had known she was the daughter of the richest man, why didn't we treat her well back then? Instead, we had to keep her like a caged canary. Now it's too late for regrets." These words were like a sharp needle, piercing straight into Wayne's most painful spot. He slammed his wine glass onto the ground. Shards of glass and wine splattering everywhere, his eyes bloodshot. He glared at the speaker and roared, "What do you know? I love her, Sandra, for who she is, not her status, not as the daughter of the Raymond family. Love her for who she is." Another usually calmer brother couldn't help but sneer, his tone sharp with sarcasm. "Then why did you choose Naomi and the child back then? Why, when you knew your family was pressuring you, didn't you resist completely? Why, time and again, did you choose to sacrifice her and make her suffer between her and family responsibility and bloodline inheritance?" He took a step closer, his gaze sharp as a torch. "Wayne, search your conscience and ask yourself, if she were really just that drunken dad, sick mom, broken home Sandra, would you be going crazy with regret like this? Would you be so jealous to the point of madness because she chose someone else? You wouldn't. You'd just think she was being unreasonable and ungrateful. What you love isn't the complete, real Sandra at all. What you love is just that weakling who completely depends on you, worships you, and makes you feel secure and in control. What you can't accept is that the person you've looked down on for 5 years has suddenly become someone you need to look up to, even someone you can't control." These words were like the cruelest scalpel, bloodily dissecting the despicable and selfish parts deep in Wayne's heart that even he himself was unwilling to acknowledge. His face was as pale as paper, his mouth agape, yet he couldn't utter a single word of rebuttal, because every word had precisely struck his weak spot. "Get out, all of you, get out!" He roared hysterically, driving everyone out before collapsing alone on the sofa like an empty shell drained of its soul, after an unknown amount of time. The private room door was gently pushed open. Naomi timidly walked in. Seeing him in this state, fear flashed in her eyes, but she mustered her courage and approached. "Wayne, are you okay? I'm so scared. To think she's actually the Raymond family's heiress, with her vindictive personality. She'll definitely seek revenge on the Stewart family, and on me. Wayne, you can't abandon me. We're family. After all, family." Wayne suddenly lifted his head, his eyes terrifyingly crimson. Surging with unprecedented violence and resentment, he harshly shook off Naomi's attempt to support him, the force so great that she staggered and crashed into the wall. "If it weren't for you, if it weren't for your family, if it weren't for those damned family responsibilities and heirs, how could I have lost her? Get out. Get the hell away from me." Naomi had never seen him look so ferocious and terrifying before. She trembled in fear, tears instantly welling up. Trying to use her last card to guilt-trip him. But we're the parents of the children. Mona and Ken are your own flesh and blood. You can't just abandon us. Children. Wayne laughed as if he had heard the biggest joke, his eyes wild and desperate. "Then they won't be from now on. From this day forward, I, Wayne, have no children. You and I are done." As if having made some firm resolution, he abruptly stood up, ignoring Naomi's cries and pleas, roughly dragged her along, and directly drove back to the Stewart family old mansion. Stewart family. The parents hadn't yet recovered from the panic of their potential cooperation with the Raymond family possibly being severed when they saw their son dragging a sobbing Naomi inside. Wayne threw Naomi harshly in front of his parents. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice hoarse yet carrying a desperate, burning madness. "Dad, Mom, you already know, Sandra is the sole heir of the Raymond family. Now, the choice is before you. Do you continue to protect this woman who bore you the so-called heir but made me lose Sandra forever? Or do you choose the future of the Stewart family? The slightest chance for me to be with Sandra." Stewart family. The parents' faces changed dramatically. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with struggle and calculation. Wayne pointed at the shivering Naomi on the floor, his tone bone-chillingly cold. "If you still want this marriage alliance with the Raymond family, if you still want the Stewart family to have a chance to climb high, cut all ties with her now, deal with her cleanly. We, the Stewart family, don't want the child." "Wayne, how could you be so heartless? That's your child." Wayne's mom cried out in disbelief, wanting to say more. Wayne's dad clenched his teeth abruptly, a ruthless glint flashing in his eyes, and said sharply, "Fine, we'll do as you say. We'll sever all ties with the Yee family completely. As for the child, our Stewart family has never acknowledged it." Naomi was as if struck by lightning, staring in disbelief at the suddenly hostile Stewart family parents and the cold, heartless Wayne. She completely broke down. "No, you can't do this. I've borne children for your Stewart family. You promised me." Wayne's mom had now calmed down. For the sake of the family's interests, she stepped forward without hesitation, roughly tearing off the jade pendant from Naomi's neck, the one she had personally placed there as a symbol of daughter-in-law, and said coldly, "Get out. From now on, you have no connection whatsoever with our Stewart family, or with Wayne. Our Stewart family will not acknowledge the child. Deal with it yourself." At that moment, Wayne's dad received a phone call. His face turning even more grim. After hanging up, he coldly said to the devastated Naomi, "I just got the news. Your Yee family's biggest project was snatched away by the Raymond family, causing a break in the capital chain. They've already declared bankruptcy. Your parents are looking for you everywhere, saying it's all because you offended the Raymond family's daughter that this disaster struck. You jinx." Under the double blow, Naomi was completely stunned. She ran out of the Stewart family's house like a madwoman, only to find she had nowhere to go. Her parents from her maiden family indeed shut her out, cursing her as a disaster and pushing her to the ground, her clothes disheveled. She wandered the streets in a daze, staring at the bustling yet cold world around her. She finally broke down completely, crying and laughing, appearing utterly deranged, and Wayne, after personally severing all of this, felt no relief in his heart. Instead, he was consumed by an even greater emptiness and despair. He found out the specific location of Raymond's family old house and drove there recklessly. It was a heavily guarded Chinese-style manor hidden halfway up the mountain. He knelt outside the tightly shut, heavy wrought-iron gate, letting the cold rain drench him completely, looking utterly wretched, and called out repeatedly, "Sandra, I was wrong. Please see me, Sandra." The rain blurred his vision, but it couldn't blur the bone-deep regret in his heart. By the floor-to-ceiling window of the manor's main building, Sandra, wrapped in a soft cashmere shawl, held a cup of hot tea in her hands. She watched the kneeling figure in the rain outside with calm, unblinking eyes, as if observing a silent play that had nothing to do with her. The butler stood respectfully behind her, Mr. Wayne has been kneeling for 3 hours. The rain is heavy, should we? Sandra gently blew away the steam rising from her tea, her voice indifferent. If he wants to kneel, let him kneel. Pay him no mind. The next morning, Wayne finally collapsed heavily in the cold rain, unconscious, due to physical exhaustion, high fever, and inflamed wounds. Sandra received the report and merely glanced indifferently out the window before instructing, "Send someone to take him back and dump him at the doorstep of the Stewart family. Also, inform the Stewart family to control their people and not come obstruct my view again." After several days of recuperation and preparations, the husband selection banquet of the Raymond family was grandly held once again. The venue was changed to the banquet hall of the top-tier 7-star hotel under the Raymond family's ownership. Security levels were heightened several times over, and the screening of invited guests became even more stringent. Wayne, after his high fever subsided and he could barely get out of bed, despite his family's dissuasion, he insisted on having his brothers forcibly bring him to the banquet venue. His face was pale, with dark circles under his eyes, and he had visibly lost weight. The cold, aloof nobility he once possessed was now replaced by a stubborn, decadent air. He stared fixedly at the woman seated in the place of honor, radiant and engaging in lively conversation with various elites, feeling as though his heart was being roasted over a fire. Consumed by jealousy and despair, he watched as men surrounded her, presenting expensive gifts, showcasing their talents, and even someone playing a piano piece for her on the spot. And she, though still with a calm expression, would occasionally nod or offer a polite, faint smile. Every subtle interaction pierced Wayne's eyes like needles. Countless times, he wanted to rush forward, pull her away from that place, and declare to everyone that she was his, but he was firmly locked in place by the sharp-eyed, cold-aired guards around her, as if the slightest unusual move from him would result in him being unceremoniously escorted out. It was time for the gift presentation. Wayne took a deep breath and, holding the legendary Moon Goddess diamond jewelry set, a piece he had expended immense effort and nearly emptied half his personal treasury to acquire, walked forward with heavy steps. He hoped that with this earth-shattering gift, he could salvage a sliver of room for maneuver. "Sandra," he said, his voice dry and tinged with a humble plea, "this is for you." Sandra didn't even glance at the brocade box in his hand, merely giving a slight nod to the assistant beside her. The assistant immediately stepped forward, expressionlessly accepting the priceless gift, registering it in the ledger as if handling an ordinary item, then placing it aside in the mountain of accumulated presents without any special treatment. Wayne's heart instantly sank to the depths, his fingers trembling slightly. Just then, Sandra's gaze swept indifferently across the room, finally settling on a figure in the crowd who was trying to lower their presence, a face as pale as a ghost. Naomi had somehow managed to sneak in. Sandra curled her lips into a faint yet icy smile, her voice clearly echoing through the banquet hall via the microphone. "Tonight's grand feast is filled with distinguished guests. However, before we proceed, there's a small matter that needs to be addressed to clear up some misunderstandings and prevent certain falsehoods from continuing to taint your ears." As her words fell, the massive screen in the banquet hall suddenly lit up. A clear audio recording began to play. It was precisely the venomous words Naomi had said to Sandra in the restroom during the auction. "I've slept with Wayne countless times. I've borne him a son and a daughter. The Stewart family looks down on you. They think you're not good enough for Wayne. That's why they forced him to have heirs with me. In his heart, you, Sandra, are just a golden canary that can be played with at will, something to be kept in the dark, marriage and children. He would only choose a woman from a suitable background like me." Every word was crystal clear, vicious and mean. The entire room erupted in an uproar, all eyes instantly focused on the pale-faced Naomi. "No, it's not true, that's fabricated, it's a setup," Naomi screamed shrilly, trying to rush onto the stage. Immediately after, the screen switched, playing a surveillance video clip. The angle was clever, perfectly capturing Naomi slapping herself hard and then instantly changing her expression to cry and complain. The footage was clear, undeniable. The truth was revealed. The gazes directed at Naomi were filled with contempt, disgust, and mockery. My God, how vicious. She actually staged it all herself. A woman like this. The Stewart family must have been blind back then. Wayne stared at the screen in shock, then abruptly turned to look at the panicked Naomi, finally realizing just how terribly wrong he had been. He had been manipulated by this woman all along, yet he had hurt Sandra so deeply. Boundless regret and rage made him almost unable to stand steady. Sandra watched everything coldly, like a judge. "Ms. Naomi, I cannot accept your so-called deep affection and loyalty. I have also experienced your noble upbringing firsthand. You are not welcome here. Please leave." Security immediately stepped forward and unceremoniously escorted the screaming, struggling, makeup smeared, and utterly disgraced Naomi out of the banquet hall. The image and dignity she had so meticulously maintained were completely shattered in this moment, leaving her reputation in ruins. After a brief commotion, the banquet hall quickly returned to its previous atmosphere, but the gazes directed at Sandra now held a few more traces of awe. The husband selection process continued. After several rounds of screening, 3 candidates with outstanding family backgrounds, abilities, and appearances finally stood at the forefront. The host handed the final choice to Sandra. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Wayne clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, drawing blood, yet he felt no pain. His eyes remained fixed on Sandra's lips, terrified of hearing another man's name from them. Just as Sandra picked up the microphone and was about to speak, "Wait," Wayne violently pushed aside the person in front of him, rushed forward, his eyes bloodshot, his voice hoarse and frenzied. Carrying a destructive obsession, "Sandra, you can't choose them, you can only be mine." He scanned the room with a frenzied gaze, his words dripping like a curse, each syllable deliberate. "I'm telling you, I've planted a bomb here today. If you dare utter any name other than mine, I'll detonate it immediately. Everyone, including you, including me, will die together. You belong only to me. Do you hear me?" The entire room fell into a deathly silence. Everyone was stunned by this sudden, insane threat. His face turned pale as he stared in terror at the maniacal Wayne. Sandra looked at him, her expression still calm, but beneath that calm lay an endless chill and a faint trace of weariness. She said nothing, merely looked at him quietly for a few seconds, then put down the microphone, whispered a few instructions to her assistant, and turned to leave the banquet hall surrounded by heavy security, without casting another glance at Wayne. This highly anticipated husband selection banquet once again ended in a farce. The next day, a major earthquake shook the business world. The Raymond family group officially released a statement announcing the termination of all cooperative projects with the Stewart family group and all its affiliated enterprises, effective immediately. The reason given was official and concise, based on strategic adjustments and value considerations of the group. As soon as the news broke, the Stewart family's stock price plummeted, with their market value evaporating nearly $10 billion in an instant. Multiple ongoing major projects stalled due to the loss of support from the Raymond family, causing the capital chain to suddenly tighten. The Stewart family was thrown into a state of panic and despair. Wayne's dad and Wayne's mom nearly fainted the moment they heard the news. They understood better than anyone what losing the Raymond family, their backing and biggest partner, meant for the Stewart family. It was a devastating blow, one that could cripple them permanently. No longer caring about saving face, the two rushed overnight to the private sanatorium where Sandra was staying, desperately begging for a meeting. After going through multiple layers of notification, they were led into a cold, sterile reception room. Sandra sat in the main seat, her expression indifferent, idly twirling a pen in her hand. Wayne's mom thudded to her knees, tears streaming down her aged face. "Ms. Sandra, Miss Sheng, we beg you, please be merciful. Please spare the Stewart family. It was all our fault. We were blind, we mistreated you. Punish us however you want, beat us, do anything, but we beg you, don't destroy the foundation of the Stewart family." Wayne's dad had also lost his former authority, hunched over with a trembling voice. "We've completely dealt with that troublemaker Naomi. We no longer acknowledge her or her child. From now on, they have nothing to do with the Stewart family. We beg you, please consider giving the Stewart family another chance." Sandra watched their performance quietly, only speaking unhurriedly after they finished, her voice devoid of any emotion. "Oh, completely dealt with. I remember, those 20 lashes for the Stewart family. Back then your son and both of you were determined to have my family enforce the punishment." Wayne's dad Wayne's mom instantly turned deathly pale. Wayne's mom suddenly realized something, as if grasping at her last straw, and actually began slapping her own face, crying and pleading while hitting herself. "I'll return it. I'll return it, however many it takes for you to calm your anger." Wayne's dad gritted his teeth, and actually pulled out his belt, trembling as he lashed it onto his own back. For a moment, the reception room was filled only with the sharp sound of lashes and the muffled groans of pain from the two men. After 20 strikes, the two were in a wretched state, covered in red marks on their faces and bodies, collapsed on the floor, looking at Sandra with hopeful eyes. Sandra then leaned forward slightly, looked at them, and curled her lips into a faint, mocking smile. "All right, I've made up my mind." She paused, then slowly uttered icy words under their suddenly brightening gazes. Still, no cooperation. Wayne's dad Wayne's mom were as if struck by lightning, completely collapsing to the ground, their faces ashen. with only endless despair and devastation remaining in their eyes, they finally understood this was retribution. It was the retribution for how they had once looked down upon Sandra. Wayne felt as if his heart was being torn apart upon learning that his parents had gone to beg for mercy only to be humiliated, and that Sandra had been so merciless and resolute toward his parents. What pained him was not his parents' humiliation, but the fact that Sandra's resolute attitude meant she no longer held even a shred of past affection for him or the Stewart family. No matter what he did, even if he were to die, he feared he could never earn even the slightest forgiveness from her. This realization plunged him into deeper despair, but without her, he would truly go mad. He discovered that Sandra was recuperating at this sanatorium and rushed over recklessly, even injuring the blocking bodyguards, before finally collapsing on his knees outside her hospital room, pleading with a broken voice, "Sandra, let me see you, just once, I beg you." Perhaps tired of his pestering, Sandra finally allowed him into the hospital room. Wayne scrambled in on his hands and knees, and when he saw Sandra leaning against the hospital bed, her face still pale, tears instantly streamed down his face, he knelt by the bedside, weeping and wailing in repentance. Shifting all the blame onto his family and Naomi, "Sandra, I was wrong, I truly know I was wrong, I was forced by my family, Naomi, and I only happened a few times, she drugged me, the child was an accident, I don't love her at all, you're the only one in my heart." Sandra listened quietly, her face completely expressionless, as if hearing a story that had nothing to do with her. After he finished his tearful plea, she slowly lifted her eyes, her gaze as cold as a scalpel. "Oh, forced. An accident." She gently picked up a document from the bedside and threw it in front of him. "That child named Mona, the first time she met me, called me poor and shabby, said I wasn't good enough for you, repeatedly called me a servant. Was that also forced by your family?" Wayne choked, his face turning pale. Sandra turned another page, which contained clear travel records and social media screenshots. "Before Naomi returned to the country, you frequently flew abroad for business trips. All to the city where she was. In this photo, you're holding that girl, she calls you dad, and you posted it in a group visible only to family." Wayne, was the 4 years of parental affection and blood being thicker than water also forced by drugs, also an accident? Every piece of meticulously investigated and listed evidence was a merciless dismemberment of his feeble lies. It brutally exposed the habitual deception and selfishness he tried to conceal, the very things he himself was unwilling to confront. Wayne completely broke down, his psychological defenses utterly shattered. He collapsed to the ground, tears and mucus streaming down his face, finally uttering his most honest, yet ugliest, inner thoughts. "Yes, I got used to having them around. I can't bear to part with the children. I'm afraid of being alone. I'm afraid of having nothing. But the one I truly love is only you. I was afraid you would leave me if you knew all this. I didn't dare tell you. I thought as long as I hid it well, kept you by my side, enjoyed your love, while also enjoying that illusion of a perfect family. Sandra, I just couldn't bear to lose you. I just didn't want to lose you." Sandra watched quietly as he broke down and wept bitterly. The last faint flicker of emotion in her eyes died out, leaving only endless coldness and disgust. "So." Her voice was as light as a sigh, yet every word pierced his heart. "You couldn't bear to part with the children she bore you, couldn't bear to lose the illusion of a perfect family she provided, yet you could bear to sacrifice me, wrong me, deceive me time and again, even choosing to abandon me at the brink of life and death. Wayne, your love is truly disgusting." She stopped looking at him and pressed the call button by the bed. "Escort our guest out." Sandra returned to the Raymond family and officially took over the reins, a piece of news that dropped like a bombshell on a calm lake, sending ripples rapidly spreading throughout the business world. And the first to bear the brunt was the Stewart family group, which had once been the closest to her. There was no warning, no negotiation, not even a formal declaration of war, a ruthless and precise commercial annihilation targeting the Stewart family, under the will of Sandra. Quietly unfolded with overwhelming force, yet so swiftly that it caught everyone off guard, the Raymond family's massive capital machinery began operating at high speed, directly targeting the core lifeline of the Stewart family. The Stewart family's most relied upon overseas mineral supply chain was intercepted midway by the Raymond family with higher prices and more favorable terms, as partners who had signed letters of intent preferred to pay huge penalties and switched to the Raymond family. The Stewart family's heavily invested, years in development next-generation smart chip project, which was about to launch, had its core road team poached by the Raymond family, with both personnel and technology relocating entirely, causing the project to instantly fall into paralysis. Stewart family's stock price was already fluctuating due to previous negative news, Raymond family's multiple affiliated funds began tacitly and indiscriminately selling off Stewart family's stocks, while simultaneously releasing bearish news, triggering panic selling in the market. Stewart family's stock price hit limit down consecutively, with market value evaporating like an avalanche. Several banks that had cooperated with the Stewart family for many years suddenly tightened or even froze their credit lines under the pretext of risk control, casting a suffocating sense of abruptly strained cash flow over the entire Stewart family headquarters. Every strike precisely hit the Stewart family's vital points, swift, ruthless, and accurate, leaving no room for the Stewart family to catch their breath or react. This was not commercial competition at all, but a one-sided, dimensionality-reducing liquidation. The business world was in an uproar. Everyone understood clearly that this was the Raymond family's newly appointed heir settling scores after the fact, with a clear target. To make the Stewart family pay a painful price for their neglect and deception over the past 5 years, Stewart family within the group, chaos had long since erupted. Shareholders were overwhelmed with anxiety, executives were panicked, employees were whispering among themselves, and a pessimistic mood was spreading. Wayne, as the president, he bore the brunt of it. He practically lived at the company, holding emergency meetings day and night. Trying to stabilize the situation and find a way out, he mobilized all his connections and resources, running around everywhere, seeking help and negotiating, but he kept hitting walls everywhere. Those business partners who used to call him brother were now either avoiding him or politely declining. No one dared to offend the powerful Raymond family at this time. He quickly lost weight, with sunken eyes and a chin covered in dark stubble. The cold, aloof, and dignified image of a CEO from the past had completely vanished, replaced only by the exhaustion and anxiety of someone pushed to the brink. Only at certain business summits or signing ceremonies where he had no choice but to share the stage with the Raymond family could he catch a distant glimpse of that figure. Surrounded by admirers, Sandra always wore sharply tailored custom suits, with exquisite makeup and an indifferent expression, moving effortlessly among a group of seasoned business foxes. Exuding a powerful and composed aura, she didn't even bother to glance at him deliberately, as if the Stewart family's current predicament had nothing to do with her. But whenever her gaze inadvertently swept in his direction, even for just a second, Wayne's heart would feel as if it were being brutally squeezed. There was no past affection, grievance, or even hatred in those eyes, only a thorough, icy indifference. It was as if Wayne, along with the entire Stewart family, were nothing but insignificant dust beneath her feet, unworthy of even a fraction of her emotion. This indifference tormented and drove him to despair more than any form of revenge. The crisis at the Stewart family continued to deepen, with multiple major projects grinding to a halt. Letters demanding loan repayments from banks arrived like a blizzard of snowflakes. The stock price plummeted uncontrollably, and rumors even began to circulate about a possible takeover, with no way out. Wayne cast aside his last shred of dignity. He found out Sandra's route after leaving the company and, the moment her bulletproof Maybach drove out of the underground garage, recklessly rushed forward, spreading his arms wide to block the front of the car. A piercing screech of brakes echoed through the air. The car window slowly rolled down, revealing Sandra's flawlessly beautiful profile, utterly devoid of emotion. She didn't look at him. Her gaze fixed straight ahead as if the obstruction in her path was nothing more than a trivial inconvenience. Wayne lunged to the car window, his hands desperately gripping the window frame, gasping heavily from his frantic run and overwhelming emotion. His voice was a hoarse, broken whisper, barely audible. "Sandra, enough, that's enough. I can give up the Stewart family. I don't care about bankruptcy or being acquired. You can take any revenge on me you want, crush me into the dirt. Leave me with nothing. You can even take my life. I just beg you, stop this, stop torturing yourself." He gazed at her cold, perfect profile, his heart aching as if being twisted. He stubbornly believed that deep down, she must also be in pain, tormented by memories of the past. Sandra finally turned her head slowly, her gaze falling upon his disheveled face. There was not a trace of warmth in her eyes, only a faint hint of mockery, as if she were looking at something utterly ridiculous. She let out a soft laugh, her voice as cold as ice. "Tormenting myself, Mr. Wayne, are you overestimating yourself, or underestimating me?" Leaning slightly forward, she stared directly at his suddenly pale face, enunciating each word clearly and cruelly. "Watching the things you care about, the legacy your Stewart family takes such pride in, along with your ridiculous arrogance and self-importance, slowly crumble and shatter in my hands, turning into worthless trash. That is my greatest pleasure now." After speaking, she no longer looked at him and calmly instructed the driver in front, "Let's go." The car window rose mercilessly, cutting off his desperate gaze and cries. The black Maybach unhesitatingly drove around him and sped away, leaving only Wayne standing there, utterly dejected, as if all support had been drained from him, slowly sliding to his knees on the cold ground. Her words echoed repeatedly in his ears, the greatest pleasure. Just as the Stewart family was in turmoil and Wayne was in dire straits, another piece of news broke out, dealing him an even more fatal blow. The young heir of an ancient European financial group, Alexander Times de Viers, made a high-profile visit to China, and one of the most anticipated items on his itinerary was a meeting with the new head of the Raymond family group, Sandra. Paparazzi captured photos of the two having dinner together on the terrace of a top-tier restaurant. In the photo, Alexander appeared handsome and refined, behaving like a gentleman, and his gaze at Sandra was filled with undisguised admiration and interest, and Sandra, though still appearing composed, had a relaxed posture, and when speaking with him, the corners of her lips seemed to carry a faint, almost imperceptible curve, one subtle enough to drive certain people mad. The media sensationalized it, calling it a meeting of the king and the queen, a powerful alliance between two top-tier elite families, and even began speculating about the possibility of a marriage alliance. These reports, Wayne read every single one of them, and each word felt like a red-hot brand searing his heart. He saw the way Alexander looked at Sandra in the photos, and how perfectly matched they appeared standing side by side. Damn it all. The office suffered once again, with almost everything smash-able shattered to pieces by him. Jealousy and despair gnawed at his sanity like venomous snakes. He couldn't accept it. Sandra was his, she could only be his. How could she smile at another man? How could she even consider marrying someone else? After a business banquet, he lost control once more, shaking off his assistants and bodyguards. He rushed toward the hotel's motorcade like a madman, accurately locating Sandra's eye-catching vehicle. He threw himself at the car, frantically pounding on the window. The window rolled down, revealing Sandra's slightly furrowed brow and those icy, emotionless eyes. Sandra, don't marry him, I'm begging you. Don't marry someone else. Wayne, gaunt and haggard, his eyes filled with terrifying red veins, his voice hoarse like a broken bellows. Give me one more chance, just one. I know I was wrong. I'll make it up to you for the rest of my life. I'll give you everything. I'll even give you the Stewart family. I just beg you, don't leave me. His words were chaotic and desperate, filled with a plea on the verge of collapse and an obsessive stubbornness. Sandra looked at him, her eyes filled only with annoyance and utter indifference, as if watching a clumsy performance. Her red lips parted slightly, the words she uttered like ice picks. Wayne, the way you are now only makes me feel even more disgusted. Move aside. As soon as her words fell, the accompanying Raymond family bodyguards immediately stepped forward, unceremoniously pulling Wayne away from the car with such force that he couldn't break free. He could only watch helplessly as the car drove away heartlessly once again, disappearing into the night, leaving him behind like a wounded beast, letting out a pained and resentful roar. However, the dramatic twists of fate are always unexpected. A few days later, Sandra traveled to a neighboring city to evaluate an important investment project. On the highway back, the vehicle she was riding in encountered an extremely unexpected serious accident. A heavy truck, as if out of control, slammed violently into her car. The accident happened in an instant. The tremendous impact severely deformed the bulletproof Maybach, sending it tumbling and crashing through the guardrail. The news reached the Raymond family at lightning speed, and also found its way to the ears of those who had been closely monitoring Sandra's movements. Wayne was in the middle of an emergency meeting crucial to the survival of the Stewart family when he received an urgent call. His face instantly turned as pale as paper, and he shot up from his chair, knocking over the water glass on the table. He rushed out of the conference room without a second thought, leaving a room full of stunned executives. He drove like a madman, speeding and running countless red lights, racing to the accident scene as fast as possible. The scene was chaotic, with police lights flashing and rescue workers operating under intense pressure. The familiar, now horrifically twisted form of the Maybach came into view, and Wayne's heart nearly stopped. He saw Sandra, trapped in the deformed back seat, covered in blood, unconscious. Sandra. He let out a heart-wrenching roar, about to rush over recklessly. Sir, it's dangerous. The vehicle might be leaking fuel, it could explode at any moment. The rescue personnel tried to stop him. Get out of my way. Wayne erupted with astonishing strength, shoving aside the person blocking him, and like a mad beast that had lost its young, he lunged toward the car. He saw Sandra's pale face, blood continuously seeping from her temple, her life force so faint it was heartbreaking. Sandra, hold on, I'm here, don't be afraid, he muttered incoherently, his hands futilely trying to pry open the deformed car door, his nails torn and bleeding. Completely unaware of the pain, the rescue workers used tools to break open the car door. Time passed second by second, and the smell of gasoline in the air grew increasingly stronger. Finally, the car door was pried open a crack. "Hurry, sir. Pull her out quickly, it's going to explode," someone screamed in terror. Wayne didn't hesitate, leaning in, carefully avoiding the sharp metal. And using all his strength, he dragged the unconscious Sandra out of the wreckage. Just as he stumbled a few steps away, holding Sandra, boom, a deafening explosion erupted. A massive fireball soared into the sky, the scorching blast wave violently hurling the two figures through the air. Wayne clutched Sandra tightly in his arms mid-air, shielding her with his own back as it bore the brunt of the impact and the shrapnel flying everywhere. The two crashed heavily to the ground. Wayne coughed up a mouthful of blood, his vision went black, and he completely lost consciousness. In the final second before his consciousness sank into darkness, he seemed to feel the Sandra in his arms stir faintly, as if she had struggled to open her eyes just a slit. In her blurry field of vision, his face, smeared with blood and despair yet etched with a reckless, all-consuming love, came into view. The explosion site was in complete chaos. Sandra and Wayne were rushed to the nearest and best hospital. Raymond's family mobilized all their resources, and the best team of medical experts gathered immediately. Sandra, who was sitting in the more bulletproof backseat and was protected by Wayne at the cost of his life, although seriously injured, mostly suffered from impact and glass cuts, with no fundamental injuries. After emergency surgery, she was out of life-threatening danger but requires rest and recovery. As for Wayne, his injuries were extremely critical. The blast shockwave and flying vehicle fragments severely damaged his internal organs and spine, with extensive burns on his back. At one point, his life was in grave danger, and he was directly admitted to the ICU intensive care unit. Steward's parents, upon hearing the news, rushed to the scene. Seeing their son covered in tubes and unconscious, they wept bitterly and were completely panicked. The Steward family was already on the verge of collapse. And now, with their pillar of support hanging between life and death, they felt utterly hopeless. With no other options left, they once again thought of Sandra. Now, only Raymond's family had the ability to hire the world's top experts and access the best medical resources that might save their son's life. They knelt outside Sandra's hospital room, disregarding their status and dignity, desperately begging, kowtowing and bowing. Only hoping that Sandra would save Wayne's life for the sake of their past relationship. Sandra had just woken up from anesthesia and was still very weak. She listened to the heart-wrenching pleas and cries of Steward's parents outside the door, her face expressionless, her eyes complex as she gazed out the window. After a long while, she spoke faintly to the assistant standing by her side. "Contact Dr. Smith's team and have them take over Wayne's follow-up treatment. The expenses will be covered by the Raymond family account." "Yes, miss," the assistant replied and promptly left. This decision was made entirely based on the allocation of top-tier medical resources and humanitarian considerations, with no personal feelings involved. Steward family's parents expressed endless gratitude, weeping with tears streaming down their faces. Sandra's hospital room was on the same floor as the ICU, but she never once went to see Wayne. She simply rested quietly, dealing with some necessary work emails. Occasionally, her assistant would update her on the situation. Mr. Wayne is still unconscious. His condition is temporarily stable, but is not out of danger yet. Miss Dr. Smith said the surgery was successful, but the spinal injury is severe. The recovery process will be long, and it's very likely there will be permanent damage. Miss, the assistant paused, his voice somewhat hesitant. The nurse said that Mr. Wayne, while unconscious, has been repeatedly and unintentionally calling your name, saying "I'm sorry, don't leave, I love you." Sandra's fingers, which were flipping through documents, paused slightly, her eyelids lowered, making her emotions unreadable. A few seconds later, she continued turning the pages, her voice calm and steady. "Without a single ripple of emotion, spare no effort in his treatment, ensure the best medicine and equipment are used. The Raymond family isn't short of money." The assistant nodded respectfully and said no more. Days passed one by one. With the full efforts of the top medical team, Wayne finally passed through the gates of death, and his vital signs gradually stabilized. That day, his long eyelashes fluttered a few times, and he struggled to open his heavy eyelids. His blurred vision gradually focused, revealing the stark white hospital ceiling and an 4-drip bag. The nurse keeping watch by his side was pleasantly surprised to find him awake and quickly stepped forward to ask softly, "Mr. Wayne, how are you feeling?" Wayne's lips were dry and cracked, moving slightly as he let out an extremely faint, hoarse voice that was almost inaudible. Yet the first question he asked was, Is she okay?" The nurse was taken aback for a moment before realizing who he was referring to, and quickly replied, "Don't worry, MS. Sandra has only minor injuries. She has already been out of danger for a while and is currently resting." Upon hearing this, Wayne seemed to finally release the tension that had been gripping him. It was as if all the strength had been drained from his body, and he let out a heavy sigh of relief before sinking back into silence. His eyes, now vacant, stared blankly at the ceiling, lost in thought. The belated truth is like a slowly peeled scab. And the despairing confession may have only just begun. He survived, but how will he spend the rest of his life, bought at the cost of his health and her complete indifference? After struggling in the ICU for over a month and enduring a long and painful rehabilitation in the general ward, Wayne was finally discharged from the hospital. His body was saved, but the permanent damage to his spine prevented him from standing as straight and tall as before. There was a barely noticeable limp in his walk, and the hideous burn scars on his back were a permanent mark of the brutality of that explosion. However, these physical wounds were far less painful than the desolate silence within his heart. Having narrowly escaped death's door, the near-death experience felt like a brutal baptism. Washing away his last traces of resentment and delusion, he finally came to a clear, despairing realization. The harm he had caused Sandra had already penetrated to the bone, beyond repair. His so-called love had long become a heavy burden and a repulsive entanglement to her, serving no purpose other than to make her weary and drive her away. He sat in the vast, cold villa, holding the latest financial newspaper. The front-page headline featured a large photo of Sandra and Alexander de Villas, the heir of an ancient European financial group. Standing side by side at the opening ceremony of an international technology summit, she was wearing a fiery red custom-made suit, with exquisite makeup and an overwhelming presence. Standing next to the handsome, elegant, and noble Alexander, she chatted and laughed radiantly, shining like a natural king and queen, a perfect match that was dazzling to the eyes. The newspaper slipped from his trembling hands. He gazed out the window at the grey sky, first shedding silent tears that burned his pale, gaunt cheeks. Then, the tears turned into low, uncontrollable laughter, growing louder and more frenzied, before finally transforming into heart-wrenching sobs. Crying turned to laughter, laughter to crying, like a complete and utter madman. He felt it for his ridiculous jealousy and paranoia, for the treasure that was forever lost, for this absurd and hopeless ending. The next day, the Stewart family group held an emergency board meeting. All the directors and executives held their breath, waiting to see how this president, who had narrowly escaped disaster, would turn the tide and save the precarious Stewart family. However, Wayne's appearance left everyone stunned. He wore a simple black suit, his face still pale and his figure gaunt. The sharp, commanding presence that once dominated every room had vanished, replaced by a profound weariness and an almost ethereal calm. He didn't look at any reports, didn't discuss any rescue plans. Instead, in a hoarse yet clear voice, he announced two earth-shattering decisions. First, effective immediately, he would resign from his positions as CEO and all management roles at the Stewart family group. Second, he had signed documents to dispose of all his personal assets. The vast majority would be anonymously donated to charity, while another portion would be used to establish a permanent charitable fund in the name of Sandra, dedicated to funding education and medical assistance for underprivileged women. The conference room was dead silent, then erupted into an unbelievable uproar. "Wayne, are you insane, Mr. Wayne? Think twice. The Stewart family cannot do without you. Are you trying to destroy the foundation of the Stewart family?" Wayne lifted his eyes, scanning the shocked and anxious faces around him. His gaze was hollow yet carried an undeniable resolve. "I've lost the most precious person in my life. These external things, fame, wealth, power, have long been burdens and shackles to me. There's no need to persuade me further." He ignored all and, swiftly and efficiently completing the transfer of power, he pushed aside a pile of documents symbolizing wealth and status as if they were nothing but hot potatoes. Then, he stood up, staggering slightly, and refused his assistant's support. Step by step, slowly yet resolutely, he walked out of the Stewart family building, never looking back. When the news broke, the entire business world was shaken once again. No one could understand Wayne's self-destructive, almost insane behavior that was ruining his future. To his parents who rushed over to question him, weeping and distraught, he only repeated that one sentence: "I lost the person most precious to me. All of this has become meaningless." Having shed all his glory and burdens, Wayne seemed like a completely different person. He changed into the most ordinary cotton shirt and trousers, and moved into a simple one-bedroom apartment. He no longer paid attention to business news, nor did he participate in any social activities. He does only one thing every day. In the early morning, he would arrive early at the street corner opposite the headquarters building of the Raymond family group, buy a cup of the cheapest soy milk, and then stand there quietly, his gaze piercing through the endless stream of cars and crowds. Firmly fixed on the entrance of that towering skyscraper, he would wait until the familiar black Maybach arrived, watch the familiar figure step out briskly surrounded by bodyguards, and stride firmly into the building. Sometimes, she might unintentionally glance in this direction, and he would instantly hold his breath, his heart racing wildly, but she never truly saw him, or if she did, it was as if she were looking at thin air in the afternoon. He might go to Sandra, the exclusive members-only library that she occasionally visited, sitting in the farthest corner, holding a book he couldn't focus on at all, while his gaze remained fixed on the figure who might be reading by the window or handling documents. Her focused profile, her slightly furrowed brows, everything made his heart ache, yet he couldn't help but stare greedily. In the evening, he would appear punctually downstairs at Raymond's house, watching her leave by car until the taillights disappeared around the street corner. Only then, as if completing some kind of ritual, would he silently walk away, dragging his slightly limping leg. He did nothing, didn't approach, didn't disturb, only watched, like a devout penitent, or like a homeless wanderer, stubbornly guarding the one light he had long since lost. Sandra's bodyguards had long noticed him, approaching several times to coldly order him away. Even making moves as if to strike. Each time, Sandra would merely cast an indifferent glance through the car window at the gaunt figure standing in the distance like part of the scenery, then wave her hand dismissively at the bodyguards without a flicker of emotion. Let him be, pretend he doesn't exist. This utter indifference tormented Wayne more deeply than any expulsion or humiliation ever could. He would have preferred her hatred, her curses, even her blows. At least that would prove she still cared. But pretend he doesn't exist meant she had completely erased him from her world. Wayne's dad, Wayne's mom, watching their son waste away day by day like a walking corpse, with no trace of vitality left in his eyes, they finally panicked completely. Swallowing all their pride and dignity, they went to great lengths to beg before Sandra. In a quiet reception room, the two elders who were once high and mighty now humbly hunched their backs, tears streaming down their aged faces. "Ms. Sandra, President Sheng, all the faults are ours. We were old and foolish, we were snobbish, we allowed that scourge Naomi to bully you. Wayne knows he was wrong, he truly knows he was wrong, now he's neither human nor ghost, he really can't go on living. We beg you, show mercy, give him one more chance, even if it's just to see him once, say a word to him." Sandra, sitting upright in the host's seat, she leisurely sipped her tea. After listening to their tearful pleas, she slowly raised her eyes, her gaze calm and unruffled, her voice indifferent and devoid of any warmth. "What does it matter to me if he can't go on living?" She set down the teacup with a crisp sound, as if striking the hearts of the Stewart family parents. "Back when I was on the verge of death, when I was belittled, humiliated, beaten, and nearly killed by your Stewart family, who gave me a single chance, who showed even a shred of mercy." She stood up, looking down at the two whose faces had instantly turned ashen. See them out. The last struggle had completely failed. Wayne, upon learning of it, said nothing, only growing more silent. On a dusk when the sunset was as red as blood, he returned to that empty little room, took out paper and pen, and wrote a letter. The letter was long, yet short. It contained no pleas for forgiveness, no recounting of pain, only a deep, settled confession. Born of all the madness and despair that had come before, he admitted he was unworthy of her, thanked her for giving him the warmest and brightest time of his life, and apologized for his own foolishness, prejudice, and all the hurt he had caused her. Finally, he wished her happiness, safety, and a smooth journey through life. He folded the letter, placed it into an envelope along with a small velvet box. Inside the box was the engagement ring he had secretly custom-made 3 years earlier, the one he had never given her. Held back by ridiculous notions of social status and his own hesitation, he went to the post office and carefully mailed the letter without writing a return address. Then, he returned to his residence, simply packed a backpack, told no one, and at dawn, boarded the earliest train leaving City N, disappearing into the vast sea of people. A few days later, Sandra received the anonymous letter and the small box at the office. When the assistant informed her that the sender's information was vague, she seemed to have already guessed what it was. She dismissed her assistant and sat alone behind the wide desk, silently staring at the envelope for a long time before slowly opening it. She read the letter first. The handwriting was somewhat shaky, yet written with extreme care. Every word seemed to be carved out with great effort. She finished reading it calmly, her face showing no expression, as if she were reading an unimportant report. Then, she opened the velvet box. The brilliant diamond refracted a cold gleam under the light, its design exquisite and unique, clearly crafted with immense care. Unfortunately, it was given too late, and it had long lost the meaning it was meant to hold. She picked up the ring. examined it at her fingertips for a few seconds, then without hesitation, casually tossed it deep into the password-locked drawer at the very bottom of her desk, mingling it with a pile of unimportant documents and miscellaneous items, as if it were not a priceless diamond ring, but merely an old relic from the past that needed to be cleared away. She did not reply to the letter, nor did she ever mention it again, but on that very same day, she issued an order. The Raymond family group was to cease all commercial suppression against the Stewart family group and resume the normal business evaluation process. This order, seemingly ordinary, allowed the previously struggling Stewart family to finally catch their breath and slowly begin a difficult recovery, but this had nothing to do with Wayne anymore. Not long after, at an exceptionally grand and lavish private dinner hosted for her by the European heir Alexander de Vries. The air was filled with the scent of perfume and the glitter of jewels, as celebrities and dignitaries gathered. Amid the melodious strains of a violin, Alexander knelt on one knee and presented a historically significant antique ring, passed down through his medieval family, proposing to Sandra. The entire room fell silent instantly, with all eyes fixed on Sandra, awaiting her response. This is undoubtedly a remarkable tale of a powerful alliance. Sandra looked at the handsome, deeply affectionate man before her and smiled slightly. The smile was proper and elegant, yet carried an unapproachable sense of distance. She reached out to symbolically assist Alexander to his feet, her voice clear and firm, carrying throughout the venue. Alexander, thank you very much for your deep affection and kind intentions. This ring is extremely precious, but I'm sorry. My current focus and energy are entirely dedicated to the development and future planning of the Raymond family group. I am temporarily unable to consider marriage. I sincerely appreciate your feelings. She refused him decisively, yet still preserved his dignity completely. Alexander's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment, but it was quickly replaced by respect and understanding. He gracefully kissed the back of her hand, indicating that he would forever remain her loyal friend and partner. The dust has settled, Sandra declared to the world in the most direct way. She didn't need to consolidate her position through marriage, her kingdom was hers to rule. From then on, Sandra took complete control of the Raymond family's commercial empire. With her iron will, sharp vision, and decisive leadership, she led the group to new frontiers, reaching unprecedented heights. She frequently graced the covers of major financial magazines, with headlines invariably reading Queen of the Business World, sole heir of the top tycoon family, and the woman who redefined the rules. In media reports, she is always portrayed as confident, powerful, beautiful, and unattainable. Occasionally, tabloid journalists capture a blurry silhouette of her at the inauguration ceremony of a Hope primary school in a remote southwestern town. As the camera zooms in, the face that once captivated City N now bears the marks of time, with calm yet weathered eyes. Only when looking at the children does a faint trace of warmth emerge. On the other side, Sandra stands before the panoramic glass curtain wall on the top floor of the Raymond family group's skyscraper, overlooking the dazzling, vibrant city nightscape beneath her feet. Her gaze is resolute, sharp, and unwavering. A new era, her era, has long since begun. Time flows. White clouds turn into grey dogs. Years passed in the blink of an eye. Sandra's name was no longer just a name, but had become a legend, a symbol. Under her leadership, the Raymond family group continuously expanded its territory, with its influence reaching across the globe, becoming a true business empire. She herself became increasingly low-key and mysterious, yet remained an object of admiration and study for countless people. Her love life remained a void, as if all passion and affection had long been burned out in her youth, leaving behind only an absolute grasp on power and career. Occasionally, there were rumors about her close association with certain elites, but they were eventually proven to be nothing more than business collaborations. It seemed she no longer needed love. She was already complete and powerful enough on her own, and in some unknown corner of the world, perhaps in a humble school on the Tibetan plateau, perhaps outside a tent at a charity medical station in Southeast Asia, or perhaps just in a quiet seaside town library, there was always a silent figure. He wore the most ordinary clothes, did the most mundane things, with calm eyes, and rarely communicated with others. No one knew where he came from or what he had done before. It was as if he had completely detached himself from that once glamorous yet cruel and cold world that had belonged to him. Choosing a life almost like that of an ascetic to spend the rest of his days, he engaged in charity work, using this method to silently atone for sins that could never be fully redeemed, and to mourn a past that could never be reclaimed. Occasionally, through a shabby television or discarded old newspapers, he would catch a few words about her, seeing her secure another groundbreaking project, seeing her top another authoritative list, seeing her remain beautiful, powerful, and unattainable. At such moments, he would pause what he was doing and watch quietly, his gaze complex, filled with a distant, vague pain, a bone-deep regret. And perhaps even a hint of pride for her that even he himself failed to recognize. Then, he would look away and continue with his own affairs in silence. What lay between them was no longer just mountains and rivers, but an entire shattered past and lives that could never align again. As time stretches on, City NS upper-class circles have long forgotten the legends of Wayne. The once influential, noble, and aloof young master of the Stewart family has faded from people's memories. Like a stone cast into the center of a lake, the ripples have dissipated, leaving no trace. Meanwhile, the name Sandra is destined to shine throughout an era, remembered and celebrated. Some people, once missed, are gone forever. Some debts, once incurred, are hard to repay in this lifetime. Vast mountains and rivers, the warmth of human life. None is you, yet all is you. The end.